If this is you, do not become a doctor. Becoming a doctor can be extremely fulfilling, but it can also be the most draining career out there. There are many reasons why you might choose to become a doctor. Whatever the reason might be, it certainly isn't my call to say whether or not you should become a doctor, but here's my take on it. Here are 7 reasons why you shouldn't become a doctor. Reason number 1, you're in it for the money. It is true that medicine does have a high payout, but that's really in the long run when you become a consultant or a specialist and have a private practice. Depending on what specialty that you choose, the average duration where you make a lot of money is something like 10 years. So making money quick is really not a reality for you. However, while you get there, often the hourly rate can be actually lower than minimum wage. This is super typical of non-training surgical registrars who often stay really late, but they can't actually claim overtime because this is super frowned upon and can be deemed as incompetent by your supervisors. So if you're here for the money, there are loads more better jobs out there that can fulfill that criteria, and you don't have the emotional burden to deal with as well. Number 2, you hate people. Being a doctor literally means that you are working for people and working with loads and loads of people. It's actually insane, like the types of people that you meet out there. This means that you often have to deal with people when they're at the most vulnerable and when they need you the most. So this can be quite emotionally exhausting, especially when you first start out or if you don't have the empathy to deal with emotional stress. Besides patients, you are also expected to work with a whole lot of people, different staff members, including nurses, the multidisciplinary team, patient's family as well. So a lot of this is a team effort on trying to get the best health outcome for the patient. So this is all about teamwork, being able to communicate well, definitely not an individualist approach. There are clinicians who are termed as non-clinical doctors. These are people like radiologists, pathologists, microbiologists, so they don't have any patient contact at all. Actually, that's a lie. They do have some patient contact, but not in a way that a normal doctor would do. What I'm saying is, actually, you don't have to be very good with people to be able to do this job, but you absolutely cannot hate people. Number 3, you cannot stand the unknowns. Look, in medicine, there is heaps of unknown. Like, we just do not know a lot of things. For a good example is, we actually only know 10% of what the human brain does. That's how much that we don't know, and there's so much to learn. And if you're the sort of person that wants to know everything, then medicine is going to be difficult for you. When someone comes to the hospital for the first time for a workup, we have a general sense of what diagnosis there is, and we work with that in terms of treatment plan and predicting their prognosis. While you've ordered those investigations and waiting for them to all come back, you may know the most likely diagnosis that the patient is currently having, or you may have no idea at all. And at the end of the day, you just have to accept that you're not going to know everything, and you're going to look at what is the most likely diagnosis and make a safety plan and manage the patient and treat the patient the best way that you can. Then you measure the patient's progress day by day, and you can switch tactics as you go. I know many doctors who tend to carry these uncertainties back home and find it really hard to sleep because they stay up all night thinking if they did the right thing for the patient or not. I do know some doctors who also stay way past their on-call shift, which is already quite long. It's from 8 AM to 11 PM. They stay till 3 AM at the hospital chasing these investigations to make sure that they've done the right thing for the patient and change the treatment plan just before they go home. And they come back again the next day at 8 AM. So if you're that type of person who just can't deal with uncertainties, then you're just gonna burn out really quickly. I've also made a video on 5 things that I wish I knew before I started doing medicine, and I've linked it in this video here, so make sure you check it out, and hopefully that will give you a bit more indication of what lots of my colleagues wish they knew before they started. Number 4, you can't handle responsibilities. Being a doctor, you absolutely have to be responsible for your patient's wellness and their safety. Most of the times it is not life or death. but there are times where you have to make decisions and some calls in emergency situations that are life and death. And any mistakes or serious errors that you make can be fatal, unlike in any other job. Even if you don't make any mistakes when it comes to an unwell patient, and if they still die, for me anyway, I'll always be over analyzing what I've done and scrutinizing myself to say, holy moly, like, is there anything I could have done? Is there anything that I didn't do? There was always that lingering feeling that I somehow was responsible for someone's death. And that can be very, very stressful and a huge emotional burden. And besides that, you can be held legally accountable for any small mistakes or errors that any human being can be making and get sued and shit for that in the United States. But we're a bit better here in New Zealand. Number 5. You don't like working long hours. Doctors work long hours. It's a given. And look, if you're interested to see the day in the life of a junior doctor working in a hospital, check out the playlist here. In general, if you want to be a specialist in the hospital, you need to put in those hours in order to become a competent doctor. In any other jobs, you are able to work smart and work short hours and be quite good at the job. But doctoring, you just need that exposure to become good. Besides the long hours, i.e. like the volume of work, the quality of work is also very high intensity, highly emotional and highly stressful. So this can be all very emotionally exhausting, especially if you have other things in life going on. If you're having a newborn, your first child, you're starting out a family, or you're studying for exams after you finish work, or you're also doing other extracurricular things to bump up your CV. And funnily, like, all these things do tend to happen in the same year. Besides scheduled on-call days or long days, there are unpredictable days or shifts where you tend to have to stay longer than intended, like any other jobs, because of the insane amount of workload for that day, or a patient decides to become unwell at 4 o'clock before you go home, so you have to stay behind in order to manage the patient because it's your responsibility. So if you are the type of person who really enjoys the 9 to 5 work-life balance and you want to be flexible and not trade your time for money, then medicine is a difficult career for you to pursue. Number 6. You don't like to study. If you're the type of person who absolutely hated school and hated learning, hated studying for exams, then medicine's not going to be for you. Med school actually is only the start of the learning curve, and already there's heaps and heaps of content and volume of things you need to learn. When you become a doctor, throughout your career, that is actually the time where you learn the most, when you start to have contact with patients and you have a bit more of a hands-on approach. Throughout medicine, well and truly into your career, there will still be a lot of assessments, a lot of exams, in order to see whether or not you are heading in the right direction of becoming a good doctor. So medicine is all about lifelong learning. Now, the last point here is quite controversial, and many people seem to think that if you don't have this quality, then you should not become a doctor. Period. But I don't think so. So see what you think. This is point number 7. You have to be 100% in love with medicine to become a doctor. So I disagree with that point, because in New Zealand and in many other countries, the age that you are expected to make that decision whether or not to pursue medicine is actually when you're 18, or when you're in your early 20s when you finish a degree. When I was 18, I definitely had no clue what I wanted. I didn't even have a clue whether or not I wanted cheesecake or bubble tea for dessert, and I'm kind of still like that in my early 20s now. So how are you meant to make such a big decision when you're at that age? Becoming a doctor and choosing that career to pursue is a major life decision, and this decision can be very biased when you're 18 or in your early 20s because of parental pressure, because of peer pressure, and because you just thought that you're a smart kid who seems to do well at school, and you thought naturally the most challenging thing that you should do that is fitting for your intelligence might be medicine. I do think that it's important that you sit down and think about all the goals, all the qualities and the things that you want to get out in life before you decide to pursue medicine. But often that is quite hard when you're 18 and you have to make that big decision. So I think My take on it is, even if you're unsure and you don't have 100% of confidence that you want to pursue medicine, you're not 100% passionate, that's okay. Definitely go give it a try. You know, worst comes to worst, you can always quit, even though the student loan is pretty hefty, but you never know if you're gonna love it or not until you try it. You should watch this next video if you find that you're still at a crossroad and not really sure what to expect in medicines and what a real doctor does. Thanks for watching, guys.